I feel like this should be a given considering the content of this video, but I still find it necessary to warn you, dear viewers, that this video will have both opinions and facts. This can be very discerning and troubling to many viewers, but unfortunately, that's just the world we live in nowadays. If you don't like Batwoman, that's fine. Just please respect those that do. And finally, the editing in this video won't be perfect. I didn't film this video in one sitting. So things will be, this video was written, recorded, and filmed over the course of a few weeks. So, considering that, things were going to be altered every so often, so this is just the forewarning. Other than that, I hope you enjoy. I guess it's alright. I suppose it's really nothing new we haven't seen yet, but there is some charm to it, and as it stands, I'll rate it anywhere between a C+ and a B+. Take your pick. There's plenty of time for the show to grow on you.
Oh, Bruce. If only it were that simple. It seems like every time that Batwoman has been mentioned on YouTube, it has been to dismay, to anger, and otherwise hatred. Usually, we're subjected to a harsh blitzkrieg of dialogue against a narrative containing secret agendas, man-eating feminist ideas, an androgynous thief that stole the life's work of one of the greatest heroes of all time, or ripping a new hole in a sexist show by using sexist language that proves chivalry died in vain. If I had been born without a shred of integrity to my name, I may have jumped on that bandwagon. Alas, I've already joined Martin Scorsese in his rally cry, and I can't be bothered to jump on this one. That, and Batwoman's not that bad. Batwoman is the 6th entry of the CW's live-action lineup of DC shows, preceded by Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Black Lightning, and they're usually referred to as the Arrowverse. Admittedly, these aren't the biggest names in the DC pantheon, except for Flash, but that's kind of the point. The CW is trying to spotlight these characters because these aren't your big-name heroes that you go to the movies to see, looking at you, Shang-Chi, but more like the B-listers to the Justice League. And even though these aren't the biggest names in the DC franchise, the stories the CW writes for them usually feel epic in the grand scheme of its own multiverse. In order to interconnect these stories, the Arrowverse would begin a tradition of annual crossover events that would see its characters uniting to fight a villain or take on a challenge that was bigger than themselves. It was introduced in 2018's Elseworlds crossover that the characters of the shows, as well as us, the audience, were introduced to Gotham City in the main focus of this video, Batwoman. Enter Kate Kane, the bat that was never meant to win. Catherine Kane began appearing in comic books as far back as 1954 in Detective Comics 233. She was introduced as a love interest for Batman/Bruce Wayne as a means of combating any allegations of homosexuality that surrounded both Batman and Robin at the time. But this is not the Batwoman from the TV show. This one appeared in 2006. These are completely different characters, though they share the same name. This one entered the vigilante scene following the Infinite Crisis storyline, which saw many of the big names of the DC comics, such as Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, take a leave of absence for a year.
Batman gave up on us. The Bat's not coming back.
And you're starting to see the little bit of irony in this situation, I hope, right? Despite her lesbian lifestyle, Kate was never allowed to get married due to some internal squabbling at DC Comics. Several of them would later tweet their support and approval of Ruby Rose being cast as the titular character, but clearly we, the viewers, the audience, the haters, understand these characters and stories better than the people who created them. Clearly, writers and artists that probably just wanted to recreate this character for a new generation to enjoy. Frankly, I find Ruby Rose's performance as Different, but fitting. I never saw her in Orange is the New Black, nor did I see Pitch Perfect 3. But I did see her in The Meg, but the first time I actually saw Ruby Rose in any type of movie or film or whatever was in Resident Evil The Final Chapter. And I will admit that I did find her a hot mess, and I was wondering when she would reappear.
While I did look up her biography online in preparation for this video, I genuinely feel that this isn't the best place to talk about such a dark subject matter. It's just not my place to do so. So, out of respect to her, which is something that I don't see a lot of to begin with, let's just say that this is the role that she needed to have in her life.
It is clear she is passionate about her role as the main character of this series, becoming the hero that she always needed growing up in life. And both ladies have had pretty miserable childhoods that would shape their futures, for better or for worse. But as for Kate herself, she didn't become Batwoman for Gotham's sake. Instead, she did it for herself, and to save her ex-girlfriend without being recognized, but she's still sticking with being Batwoman to prove she can do it. Which may admittedly sound really selfish to a lot of people, but please hear me out.
Kate Kane watched both her mother and her twin sister die in a car crash at the age of 10, and for the longest time, she never gave up hope that either of them had survived somehow. Nonetheless, she would be plagued by survivor's guilt for being the only one to walk away. She was never allowed to serve in the military or the Crows, depending on which iteration of the story you go with, because of her lifestyle. She was expelled from Point Rock Academy a week before she was to graduate. And yes, this is the same person she'd later saved during her first outing as Batwoman, only for Kate to find out she is married to a guy. The bat that would never win.
Now, I might not be a psychiatrist, but I would imagine that Kate felt she would never amount to anything in her life. Combine that with the immense survivor's guilt she lives with, and a whole host of other psychological baggage she carries, Kate is broken. She would never be able to prove herself in life. By becoming Batwoman is her way of proving that she is capable, not only to the world, but to herself. She needs to make the most of her life in the way that justifies her being the only one to walk away from that car accident. She's more interested in how she saves the day rather than just saving the day. Choosing to do so her way, for what is a man or woman, what has she got? If not herself, then she has not to say the things that she truly feels and not the words of one who kneels. She's doing it her way, not Batman's way. Ms. I'm not about to let a man take credit for a woman's work.
Claim that Kate Kane broke into the Batcave, stole Bruce Wayne's concept for Batman, the Batsuit, and all of his weapons isn't just misguided, it's hypocritical. Misguided in assuming that the set you see in the Batwoman show as being the Batcave, when it's a bunker that was built beneath Wayne Enterprises. Bruce Wayne actually built a series of these after the events of Nightfall, where he would keep emergency equipment. The actual Batcave still resides at Wayne Manor, completely untouched by anyone that we know of to this day. The equipment Batwoman uses are akin to backup gadgets, something that Bruce would have used if he couldn't make it to the Batcave. Batman's departure has left Gotham without a protector, someone to take a stand against crime. However, Bruce Wayne always believed that there would always be a need for a Batman, and so did those that followed him. Someone to defend Gotham City against any threat it might face, and Kate Kane is the next person to take on the mantle of Gotham's protector. You see, Batman isn't just an alter ego. It's an idea. It's a legend.
But if you make yourself more than just a man, if you devote yourself to an ideal, and if they can't stop you, then you become something else entirely. Which is legend, Mr. Wayne.
It's something that transcends just being a mere man or woman. I wouldn't go as far as to say that the mantle of Batman was passed on to Kate Kane. She, more or less, found the mantle and wiped the dust off of it. She didn't seek out the role of Gotham's protector, but saw it as a way to prove herself. And as the series continues, it does seem like she is willing to do this more and more for Gotham and its people.
But let's take the mantle of Batman and becoming Gotham's protector out of the equation and focus only on the aspect that she stole the Batsuit and the gadgets. Just focus on the black and white morality of Kate Kane's actions.
Why do I find it hypocritical for these fans to hate Kate Kane for her actions in this show? Well, that's because some of us grew up watching a show called Batman Beyond. And if you haven't seen it, it's a great series. I highly, highly recommend it to anybody who's a diehard Batman fan. But for those who have watched the show, maybe they haven't realized that Terry McGinnis, the main character of the show, also stole a Batsuit.
Now, one could make the valid argument that Terry McGinnis stole a far more dangerous version of the Batsuit, as it was, more or less, a Bat-themed Iron Man suit. But I digress, the statement still stands. Why do we call it a crime when Kate Kane steals the Batsuit when Terry McGinnis is guilty of the exact same crime? They're surprisingly similar in terms of their respective shows, plot, and setup. Both are set in a dystopian Gotham City that no longer has a Batman to protect it. Both star a main character that is somehow related to Bruce Wayne. Both of these main characters tried to stand up to the violence that was plaguing their city, only to get their butts handed to them. While exploring a building that just so happened to be owned by Bruce Wayne, they accidentally stumble across the Batcave and realize who the Dark Knight really is. When they realize that they can't rely on Batman or Bruce Wayne to save the day, they stole the Batsuit, or borrowed it, and some equipment to fight a criminal gang. After saving the day, they both decide to take on the mantle of Gotham's protector because the police, as it turns out, are ill-prepared to stop these new waves of bad guys.
Serve and protect my ass.
Unknowingly becoming the new symbol of hope in Gotham City.
This is why I felt compelled to make this video. Why I decided to take the road not traveled, as it were. It's easy nowadays to destroy and belittle something that we don't agree with, but what drives me crazy is the level of ignorance that people use in justifying their claims when a little research can make all the difference. Batman doesn't come out during the day.
Except when he does or has to.
Batman wouldn't have left a young Kate by herself. He would have saved her first and leave dozens of children at the mercy of the Joker. I think we know how that could end. Probably would have gone as well as this. You see where I'm going with this?
Batman's the more popular character. Why replace him with this? Yes, Batman is a highly profitable character that pretty much everyone can recognize right off the bat. But in the past decade alone, we have had 2 different cinematic portrayals of the Caped Crusader in 4 movies, 7 if you want to include the Lego movies. We've got an award-winning trilogy of video games, 6 total if you want to include the Lego games, and I guess you can throw in Arkham Origins and a bunch of other stuff, but I digress. A live-action show with no Legos in it, and we also get those amazingly animated videos and movies, even more amazing cartoon series, and back to the Legos. And suddenly you realize that this is a lot of Batman and Legos. Someone please get me this. It was actually a safe move on the CW's part not to heavily feature the Dark Knight in this show and risk oversaturating the franchise even further. That's what Twilight's for. But please someone get this for me. It looks really, really awesome.
It was only while writing this script that it dawned on me that on her own, there really wasn't anything about Kate Kane / Batwoman that I could really talk about without comparing her to Bruce Wayne or Batman. Like, she's living in his shadow, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. Living in someone's shadow whose whole shtick revolves around, well, sticking to the shadows. Again, it's ironic that you want to stand out from a guy that does everything to blend into the darkness. Well, maybe she could change her costume so that it wasn't that dark, and maybe choose a color that would help pop. Oh my god, mind blown!
But what's a good hero without a good villain?
Enter Alice, a Wonderland-inspired psychopath whose sanity swings her in and out of madness, making her equally entertaining,
Right. I'm Alice.
as well as threatening, as well as several steps above anything Disney has ever done in recent years.
Could use some salt.
To many viewers of the show, Alice is the best thing about this series thus far, and it's easy to see why. Every second actress Rachel Skarsten, I hope I'm saying that, is on screen is a second of chaotic, unstable, bull in a china shop madness. And I love every moment of it.
But like my middle school years, we all have our own demons that we have to confront throughout our own lives. And Batman's villain lineup is pretty much that. His own demons. It would be disingenuous for the writers to have a Batman villain to start off our series for Kate Kane to fight, but instead a villain for Batwoman to fight. And seeing how Batman's villains reflect some aspect of Bruce Wayne, it only makes sense that Alice do the same for Kate Kane. Now, a few people have complained that Alice is just some wannabe Joker for Batwoman to fight. And this is one of those times where I am so happy to say how wrong they are. You see, Joker finds joy and humor in the improv, impulse-driven mayhem and destruction that he causes wherever he goes.
But I like it.
He's more of a spur-of-the-moment type of villain.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
Alice, on the other hand, has a plan laid out before her and will accomplish that task with whatever form of crazed madness or logic that she has running in that mind of hers.
I think it's time for Gotham to watch Commander Crow squirm.
Batman won't kill the Joker.
Out of some misplaced sense of self-righteousness.
And the Joker.
'Cause you're just too much fun.
But as for Batwoman and Alice, things are a little different. You see, they're sisters. At least that's what Kate's reasoning is. She doesn't want to kill her sister. Instead, she wants to reunite with her and make up for lost time. Alice, well, I think she enjoys having her sister back in her own twisted way, but part of me wants to think that she actually wants to go back to the way things used to be.
Because I never gave up hope that I would find you. And why is that? Because I should have been with you.
Feels lost, she's broken, and she felt overall abandoned by her own father, and that's why she's out to get Gotham. That's why she's after her father, which is, Alice, how did you put it?
He thinks he's Gotham's white knight. But he's a bully whose army bullies the city into obedience. And I want the world to know that he doesn't scare me.
Oh, okay, thank you for clearing that one up. And I think that's the biggest difference between the two. One actually has a motivation for doing what they do, and the other one doesn't. And this is something I really enjoy about Kate and Alice's dynamic. Kate is willing to put everything else in her life on hold if she feels she can get her sister back. Now, Bruce Wayne hasn't had this type of issue in his life, at least not to my knowledge. But, well, I know for a fact that she won't be the only villain in this first season, and we will get plenty more as this show goes on. I will say that Alice is a good step in the right direction. So for now, Gotham is in good hands.
Well, actually, while on the subject of Gotham, let's talk about it. I love the setting for Gotham City. Personally speaking, I feel that out of all the cities in the Arrowverse, Gotham City is probably the most realistic. The Arrowverse built up Gotham City for a long time, and when I first saw it, I wasn't disappointed. Gotham has usually been portrayed as a city in New Jersey with influences from places like Chicago, Detroit, and New York. But the series itself was filmed in Chicago and Vancouver. But it's Chicago I'm focusing on, as it was also where Christopher Nolan filmed the Dark Knight trilogy. The fact that the series revisited the locations used in these movies gives a sense of familiarity to the viewer. And while a lot of these shots may line up, a few might not, but it's still the same city. The show even makes a few allusions to the comics in regards to Gotham City itself. Obviously, Arkham Asylum would be one such case. It would be foolish not to include the famous insane asylum where most of Batman's villains are locked up. I even like the inclusion of Rachel Maddow as Vesper Fairchild, though we have yet to actually see her in person, using her as a voiceover whenever we get those panoramic shots of Gotham. We, or at least I, get the impression that she's speaking on behalf of Gotham. So, while not a huge part of the show, Vesper does add some depth to the city as a whole, making it all that more believable. Gotham has changed. Without Batman, it had to change. It had to adapt in order to survive. Things, policies, people, places. The Gotham Batman left is not the same Gotham we're introduced to in this series. It's not his Gotham City anymore. And likewise, this is not his story anymore. This story is about Kate Kane and her growth as a character and as a hero. It's about a new wave of evil and villainy that now threatens this city. And it's these aspects about the show that I really enjoy and I look forward to, because it sure ain't that politics stuff, right? Yeah? Nobody's complaining about the politics, right? It's just a little thing, you know? Something we're all used to in our media right now, right? It's been going on for a long time, right? People made a big deal about it. Guess I better talk about it. Comic book heroes bending and caving to the fears of a paranoid percentage of a population is nothing we haven't seen before. The Silver Age of comics rings that bell. Back then, there was no SJW. It was the CCA, the Comics Code Authority. And complaining about progressive ideals and themes doesn't really hold a candle to the movement that tried to ruin the entire industry. You see, the CCA feared that superhero comics, Batman, Flash, Superman, Wonder Woman, they thought these comics would turn children into juvenile delinquents. The same way people nowadays think violence in video games, or dare I say, movies, would cause an increased rate of violence amongst the population. So actions were taken to censor anything and everything that didn't adhere to a strict conservative code of conduct. I'll leave a link in the description below for more information, but suffice to say, things had to change. And fortunately, things did change. We survived that era. Heck, we thrived. Some of the most popular heroes were debuted at that time. But the CCA was fearful. Fearful of the social changes and differences, the same way people thought Dungeons and Dragons would send your child straight to hell. Their heart was in the right place, but in the long run, it really didn't do any favors. Back then, we feared social difference with hate, resentment, but now we ridicule it. We used to treat such differences as some real and dangerous threats that could undermine our very society and change humanity as we know it for the worse. But now Not only do we berate and belittle the media we don't understand, but we also do this to the people as well. Entire communities of people. It's not enough for us to say our piece and move on. Today, if we see something we don't like, we will stop at nothing until we get what we want. Someone speaking at a college event that you don't care for, boycott the event and make sure they can arrive. That'll show them. A group of people protesting an injustice they see in their society. Infiltrate that rally and record yourself trolling them. That'll make them look good and stupid. A movie or a TV show that comes along and challenges your own personal views. Smear and besmirch it. Besides, nobody's going to see it anyway. If we see something we don't like, rather than just move on with our life, we won't stop it until we've ruined any chance of that something of ever returning. The script for this video wasn't easy. I had tons of ideas for things to include or write down that ultimately would be cut or turned down because I wanted to provide the best content I could for my viewers, whether they're new or returning. As a result, I spent almost 2 months writing, recording, and filming this one project. While I wanted to do a video defending the original Batwoman trailer, over time I realized that I'd be faced with a bigger challenge once the show finally arrived. And after all that, here's what I got for you. Look, the world changes. Places change. People change. And the stories we tell will change. We update them to keep them relevant, not just for our sake, but for the sake of future generations. Within each retcon and reboot is a reflection of that generation. And like it or not, we live in a time and generation of social issues and dilemmas. And while some may say that the CW may handle such things and ideas with the social grace of a butterfly in a cement mixer, I would retort by saying, nobody's really done any better. These are tough issues to address and even more difficult ones to solve. But these issues do exist. But that doesn't mean you should give up. There will always be something or someone that will make you angry.
But some of these claims, these comments, you're not helping. Look, I'm not saying you don't have a reason to be angry or upset with Batwoman or with any other media out there. There are times to be angry and stand up for ourselves and what we believe in. But that should never be your first choice. Never. Because when we get angry, we get lost and we lose track of what matters. In fact, it's so easy to respond with anger, it's lazy. It's about as lazy as the rants I've seen a bazillion times in the comments. You want to know what wasn't easy? Making this video in a way that respects both the critics and the fans. But it was still a better option than getting upset. Because I read the comments, and it was painful.
Painful not to reply or say my piece. And I'll admit, this isn't a perfect series. Far from it. But I feel that there's a lot of potential to be had. I respect the passion and hard work put into this project, or any other project. And sometimes, I'll admit, it is hard. It is extremely hard to continue.
Sometimes they do take a stance on something you may or may not agree with. But I believe that this was done for a reason. And that's one of the reasons superheroes resonate with so many people. They fight the battles that we can't. They stand up for those in need. Sometimes they confront the problems we never knew about. In that respect, I think this girl is a hero. Thanks for watching. Happy holidays to you all, and
Merry Christmas, Alfred. Goodwill toward men. And women.
I guess while we were on the subject of Batwoman, maybe it's time to disprove some more complaints of another 2019 female hero. To say or imply that somehow Batwoman is worse than Captain Marvel, I mean, is a clue of the ignorance to be had against your non-enlightened comic viewers or people.